Indeed. What did India and the Prime Minister here, Mr. Modi, get right in their approach? Obviously, there was a very strict lockdown the first time around, and that mitigated the impact of the first wave, as you yourself have noted, but left us a little vulnerable. Now, could that vulnerability have been avoided? Could we have done something better so that we didn't have to really get hit the manner in which we did? And, you know, those visuals still keep playing back in my mind. I mean, my own friends and family members and colleagues fell victim to it, so, you know, it's left a big impression. Could we have done better between the first and the second?
You know, it's when the bulk of your population is doing jobs, you know, where you have to physically be present to do the job, it's not as easy as it is in a rich country where you have all these office workers who can just do, you know, virtual meetings. And so, you know, I expected before the pandemic that the death rates in places like India and other middle-income countries would be much higher than in the rich countries. It didn't end up that way, you know, even if you take the higher estimates. You know, part of that was the vaccination, getting that out fairly quickly. Which lockdowns were appropriate and where more should have been done, I don't think any country's come to a consensus on that. You know, India has multi-generational households. So that's tricky because you have young people out going around who might get infected, and then in that multi-generational household you get, you know, spread there. The U.S. has that less. The U.S. has more elderly care homes, and that's a very sad story that because early on we didn't realize, you know, that it could sweep through those elderly care homes. A lot of the deaths, for example, in New York, were in elderly care homes. And you know, in the future, I think we'll understand that, you know, you have to diagnose everyone who's going into those homes so you don't get the disease spreading. You know, so overall, you know, the government did prioritize the disease. You know, it's got in ICMR a lot of experts. You know, so I'd say that our relationship with the various government agencies, we felt, you know, everybody was doing their best job, very aware of this as a priority, willing to take some short-term pain in order to keep the death rate down. But if we, you know, if the whole world had more dedicated people, if we practiced in advance, you know, the numbers in every country should have been quite a bit lower.
Before I quote from your book once again, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate India's response and the ongoing attempts at trying to obviously stall another wave?
Well, because, you know, that oxygen centers were put together pretty quickly and vaccination got done. In fact, you know, India exported some of those vaccines once its needs were met. You know, I'd give India 7 or 8. It's, you know, of course, the pandemic is a tragedy. I don't want to play down in any way the deaths and the economic loss, nor do I want to say that the world as a whole was smart about this. You know, health experts, including myself, talked about it in advance, and we didn't really have dedicated teams of people. But given that, you know, we had to scramble, if you look at those, you know, oxygen centers, you look at the clear messaging on vaccination. You know, unlike the U.S., you didn't get a political thing where one party says vaccines are good and another party says they're bad. Likewise with masks. I mean, usually I think of the Indian democracy as kind of a wild west. In this case, I think the U.S. Was, you know, crazy in that, you know, you have a party, you know, almost denying that the disease is taking place. And so, as far as I know, you avoided the politicization that, you know, all the parties were saying, please go get vaccinated and please wear masks. Lockdowns, there was good debate, and as I say, you know, to this day we don't really understand where we should have done more, where we should have done less. I do know that things like shutting schools down have a big cost, and so in the U.S., students who lost 2 years of learning, and it's going to be a decade before we can catch up on that.